Welcome back. You got Will and Iman here from the Block Runner, MetaZone, Rovi, and MScribe. And today, the pandemic spreads.
Even harder. Even harder. So this is the second pandemic we've identified and covered on this channel.
It's the second in like 3 years, dude.
Yeah, it's literally like for real. So if you go back to like February 2020 on this channel, you'll see like some podcast recordings where
we're talking about China and they're like spraying all that stuff in the streets.
Yeah, like this is before like this hit mainstream waves, right? This is like 4chan news and such, and like deep Twitter.
I think it was December 2019 when we were talking about it, dude.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Way back? Probably.
Yeah.
Because it took a few months for that to like really spill out.
Yeah. It was like everyone's in denial. Like in the first 3 months. It's like, oh, that's not coming here. We're Americans. It doesn't happen here.
Right, yeah. That's communism. That's what communism looks like, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Stuff like that. And then we were like, okay, we hear you. But once this, like, you started hearing this is happening in, Thailand or Japan and Germany.
Europe.
You started to hear that.
It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, we're like, okay, once we get those indications and we're full-blown pandemic is happening. And it did. Right, we made those predictions back then, and now we have like a crypto version of that.
We're making predictions of everything, and like
that's what we do.
We're out here like Steph Curry, dude.
Something like that. Steph Curry, fucking
Tom Brady, and MJ all combined.
That's right, dude. That's what the Block Runner ethos all wrapped into one, dude.
Yeah.
So we made the predictions too about this whole inscription thing. This is before we saw this kind of like spill outside of Bitcoin's bounds, right?
Yeah.
We're like, hold on a second. It's like, well, actually, you know what? The big confirmation was whenever we interviewed, what's his name? Tom Lehman?
Tom Lehman, yeah.
Inscription guy.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Middle March.
Good idea. He's like, you know what? I like ordinals, but there's no real way to do that on Ethereum, so let's use call data.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're like, dude, this is definitely going to spread everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
And now here we are, dude. How's that look?
Yeah, so I guess we should start with the dashboard. So here is a dashboard built by this guy, Hilo, Hildobby.
Hildobby?
And if you look at this dashboard, it looks like, the country like
fatality
rate of this pandemic.
Right.
But if you look closely, it says the percentage of gas spent on inscriptions. It's like Arbitrum, BNB, and we have Avalanche, 50% in Avalanche over the last 24 hours.
Wow.
And then you keep looking here. It says gas spent on inscriptions, Avalanche, I don't know, taking the lead here. There's Base. People are doing stuff on Base.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ethereum, Gnosis, Arbitrum.
Pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
All the major chains that exist are EVM, I guess, variations and such.
Yeah, and what's even crazier, they have raw transaction counts daily for the past 3 months. Just transactions on these different chains. Largely, like in the grand scheme of things, largely dead-ish.
Yeah. Right?
And all of a sudden, November, when they activated inscriptions, all of a sudden we have like activity.
Yeah, we just saw the same thing on yesterday. We talked about stacks, right?
Yeah.
Stacks, very valuable proposition, a programmable layer on Bitcoin and such. Largely in comparison to ordinals and such.
Yeah.
Pretty much non-existing activity, right? In context of ordinals and inscriptions and such. But once you bring that stuff over there, all of a sudden you have 10,000 transaction blocks, and all of a sudden, simple bridges and swaps take days to perform, and people are losing funds because of mempool clogging and such, right?
Right.
It sounds like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's like, the activities of Bitcoin have spread officially to like every chain. It's in full-blown mania froth stage at this point, in my opinion.
The fatality rate is increasing exponentially.
Yeah, so I mean, should we have some pandemic measures to account for? Dude, what do we do with this spread, right? Because
I think we just manage it, right? Because it's forever out there, right? The disease is out there.
Some people are claiming, though, that this is a step back, right?
Right, yeah, and we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at this chart here. It says inscription stats, blockchain. It lists out the different blockchains. And I think this is inscription counts. We're looking at 78 million on Binance, 161 million on Polygon. So I don't know how accurate this is.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems pretty ridiculous.
Well, considering
because Bitcoin's at 48 million.
Yeah, but it's also much more fee intensive than Polygon and such.
Oh yeah, it is 100%. Yeah.
So that could be contributing to it. A lot of this could actually be legitimate, like spam. They like to label ordinal inscriptions as spam. In most cases, they're new ticker deployments and such for BRC20 tokens and
AKA spam, I guess.
Yeah, but what I'm saying though, like maybe on the Polygon, it's like legitimately just.
But here's the thing: like the whole spam argument is weird to me because you have to pay money in order to spam, right?
It's true.
So like it's going to defeat itself. The spamming will stop because people will run out of money. But we're pushing pictures and JSON data and text, and it could also not stop because people
want it.
Care about. Yeah, they want it.
There's demand for it, so there's an incentive to, push out more of these products.
Yeah, and so the spamming argument doesn't work in this case. It just doesn't, because spamming eventually stops because you run out of money.
Well, yeah, it doesn't become feasible, right?
Right.
Yeah, at some point, and we've seen this enough times in Web3. These things. It's important to keep like a grounded mentality.
Yeah,
in moments like this.
So let me give you another example, right? Elon is charging everybody for Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to spam tweets when it's free.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, hey, if you just pay $8 a month, the spamming will slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the answer to a Sybil attack. A Sybil attack is literally spamming. And to prevent that, you just charge money to do a transaction, and then it stops.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just a weird argument. But let's take a look at this tweet. So it says, inscriptions have taken down multiple chains and caused huge gas spikes over the last couple of days. However, very few people actually understand what's going on. Here's a simple explanation of inscriptions, how they work, and why they're being spammed everywhere. So we're not going to go through this entire thread, but because they explain inscriptions, and everybody watching this channel knows exactly what an inscription is.
Correct.
If you don't know what an inscription is, definitely read this thread.
Definitely.
This link will be in the description. But basically, an inscription is injecting data into a specific field in block data, right?
Right.
And so in the case of Bitcoin is witness data. In the case for Ethereum is call data. And so it goes on here. And there's a particular tweet that gets quote tweeted by Tom, which we mentioned earlier. It says, inscriptions also feel like taking a step backwards. The EVM was designed to support smart contract logic. Inscriptions instead move all computation off-chain. This leads to a more fragmentation and trust in indexers. There's also basically zero composability with inscriptions. And so let me pull up that quote tweet. So Tom comes in and he says, inscriptions are a step backwards compared to what? To centralized L2 sequencers that can be turned off at any time?
So he's referring to like base and such.
Yeah.
Arbitrum.
L2's proposition is to increase speed, reduce cost, reduce fees at the expense of decentralization.
Right, is relying on these, like, I guess, new third-party sequencers to roll up all these activities happening in some other, like, tertiary environment to eventually be broadcasted to the main chain, right? So, yeah, there's a whole new, like, ecosystem of trust and reliance there, and of cost and, centralization, new vectors, right?
Yeah, so Tom actually breaks down, why this guy's argument is not that great. And I'll read is just the last part. In summary, while e-scriptions, the creator of e-scriptions, Tom Lehman, and L2 solutions each have their trade-offs. E-scriptions offer a distinct advantage in terms of resilience and censorship resistance, making it a valuable option in the broader Ethereum ecosystem and not a step backwards. Ultimately, there's a value case for inscriptions, and in this case, e-scriptions, that reduce the fees to get involved and have this censorship resistant kind of attribute to them.
Why? Because it's more on chain?
Well, because it's data injected into the block itself.
Okay. But then what about the vectors of a potential attack or disruption or exploitation or whatever for relying on off-chain indexing to process all the logic and such?
Well, that's the thing, is that off-chain indexers need to index the data of the chain so that they can be queryable, meaning developers can see, can filter out for attributes. They can do, anything that they you would expect for a given, collection, right? But you have to rely on this off-chain indexer to give you that data. Otherwise, you're going to have to run your own node and then do your own indexing, and then you can trust yourself. Right.
Yeah.
So that is the consequence of doing this. And now indexing happens on Ethereum. It's taken care of by projects such as the Graph.
Yeah.
And so let's take a look at what the Graph says. So the Graph is a decentralized protocol for indexing and querying blockchain data. The Graph makes it possible to query data that is difficult to query directly. And so they have an infrastructure, a decentralized one, to query data that's within the block.
Okay. Which is important, right? Because that reduces what, I guess, these new detractors, this whole fact that we're relying on indexers so much. By creating a distributed network of nodes that are performing these much needed indexing tasks,
right,
we're reducing our reliance on centralized entities or parties doing all this, like a source of truthing.
That's right.
For the developers, right?
That's right. Yeah. So now
that's good. And the Graph has been around for a while, right? So I feel like the EVM ecosystem is probably in better hands because this has been around for a much longer period of time and it's much more trusted, I guess, and proven.
Yeah. So when we first discovered Graph a while back, right, we talked about this on the podcast as well, right? This is nothing new.
Yeah, we knew the Graph was important because we've built products on EVM
that needed to use the Graph, right? Yeah. It wasn't like a nice to have. It was like a
necessity.
Yeah, it was required.
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, if it's a requirement for us, it must be a requirement for other developers. So let's look into the Graph, and here we are. We found it, right? And so right now it's worth 1.4 billion market cap, and let's see, who is the counterpart to the Graph on Bitcoin?
Yeah,
well, it's Trac, and Trac is contributing to like the pandemic spread, right?
Supporting, I guess, or coming into
an acknowledgement of market activity, right? It's like, oh, you guys like Doge Map and Doji? It's like, well, I'm going to support that, and I'm going to index it, and here we are, Trac.
Yeah. So they're kind of like the World Health Organization. They're going out there, like, actually,
like, trying to
pulling out the data of, like, how many people out there in the world are actually getting infected and such.
That's right.
Painting a real picture of, like, the pandemic, the situation, and relaying that data to, I don't know, the fucking medical infrastructure, Pfizer and such. Like, this is how many fucking vaccines we need to produce, guys. That's what Trac is doing.
Yeah.
They're out there collecting the data and parsing it, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, Bitmap was heavily reliant on Trac's indexing and developers around that. They're working on developing non-arbitrary token indexing, which is a difficult task.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's going to be way more difficult than just like following transfer inscriptions on chain.
Right, it's an experimental protocol for a reason, right? Because this is a whole new way to, I guess, generate tokens and such.
Right.
Relying on non-arbitrary data components and such that indexers need to kind of maintain and such. So it is a whole task in itself. So Trac, on top of all of this, like, all right, I see you, Doge. I see you, Doginals and Doge Map. We're coming to back you up too.
That's right.
That's a lot, dude. Trac is definitely on a mission, right?
Yeah, and so just to kind of look back, I remember when we first talked about Trac, and it was like 5-7 cents or whatever.
Fucking pennies, dude. Like a 200,000 market cap, and we were saying the same things.
We were saying the exact same things.
It's like Trac. Clearly, indexing is like the biggest elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Whenever Unisat goes down, their indexer, like everything follows.
Yeah,
that's an issue.
Yeah.
We can't just all rely on a single indexer. We need like a nice distribution of indexing effort in this ecosystem. So like Trac could be on its way to bringing something like that into the space, right? So
yeah, and we interviewed Benny before, and we asked him, like, hey, what are your plans to decentralize this? And he has plans. I don't think he's disclosed like what those plans are exactly. But yeah, decentralizing indexing is going to be a critical component to having reliance and trust as part of the whole indexing requirement of ordinals and Bitcoin and dogenals, right?
And who knows where that's going to stop. So it really like, it's kind of like a race between the Graph and Trac, I guess, like who can service the majority of this inscription space, right?
Yeah, I don't think the Graph has integration onto Bitcoin because there's no need.
What? No need?
There was
no
need.
Yeah. Now there's a need, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see if like the ecosystem pulls the Graph somehow into the
if
Bitcoin
they do,
space.
That's going to be crazy.
Yeah, well, if not, then Trac's going to have to like accelerate, I guess. It's progress towards something of semblance, something similar, right? Where I guess third-party developers can contribute to the maintenance of all this like source of truthing.
Yeah,
because it's a lot. There's a lot going on, and we need sub-indexers in a network of such. You know what I mean? And I guess you got Alex Labs and Unisat Domo working on something similar to that. This whole
that's true
big Giga Oracle network thing going on. Indexer of indexers.
Right.
So there's multiple things happening all at once, right? But still, nonetheless, this is permeating, dude. It's spreading.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the pandemic is pretty disgusting in the crypto world.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, it was fast. So yeah, that's the video for today. Just the pandemic is spreading. What does that mean for us, dude? Are we going to be covering this inscription?
We can't.
Inscription gate for all these like chains?
I don't think we can. That would be like we were pumping out daily videos, like 6 different videos a day covering the happenings of every single chain.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, the innovation happens on Bitcoin first.
Oh, yeah.
And then
that's where we like to be.
Yeah, and then it gets spread out.
Yeah,
everywhere else.
We like to find where the innovation originates from. And yeah, this is why we started on Ethereum.
That's right. That's where the innovation was.
Yeah, the DeFi happenings were all on Ethereum, and the metaverse came from Ethereum and NFTs and such. So yeah, that was the interesting space of the time.
That's right.
And then we discovered a lot of this new innovation, the new newness, the new happenings, this what we've identified as this new like non-arbitrary era.
Yeah.
This shit is originating on Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we're talking. We're gonna probably end up refocusing a little bit of what's happening on stacks and such because it's as closely married to Bitcoin as you can get.
Right.
Right.
But it also solves a big problem, which is the congestion, the fees,
and
user experience, programmability.
Right. So that's on the horizon.
Yeah.
Allegedly. Which is why you want to pay attention to it, right? See if it actually comes to fruition. Because if not, man, I don't know. It's like this pandemic, that might be the ultimate
the end of crypto?
Or like that's the vaccine, dude. Just don't innovate. Stop innovating, and then eventually like the fucking corona will just fizzle out. It'll just die away.
Yeah.
But you gotta bring in new variations of enhancements, right? New functionalities, and let's make this thing scalable.
You know, it's funny. We have a dashboard to kind of display the pandemic spreading, right? But there's been other pandemics in crypto, right? With Ethereum and DeFi. And all that innovation has spread to other chains.
It's true.
But there was never a dashboard to kind of like put it all together like this.
I'm sure that it existed out there. It's just we didn't really pull them up. You know, like whenever NFTs or all of a sudden you had CryptoPunks on Avalanche and on Polkadot and on Cardano and on Solana and Binance Smart Chain. Like everybody had like
they had a CryptoPunk.
Yeah, like a Polka Punk or a fucking Binance Punk or
right. Yeah,
we saw this or we saw it, but we didn't see the fucking doomsday data picture like this.
Right. But yeah, so the pandemic has spread. I guess
main takeaways. What do you do with this information? I don't know. That's the point where it's like kind of labeling this as frothy. When you get to a point where something becomes this successful and like this much demand for, I guess like a new innovation in the Web3 space, it's like, I guess clock is ticking for like a saturation point, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That enters a new phase in the cycle.
Correct. And that's where people like us.
Yeah.
Now we're kind of exhausted, right?
Yeah.
Literally exhausted by like the oversaturation of meme tokens.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to follow the innovation and the pace of that and such. So it's like, now where do we fix our attention? Right?
Yeah. And then everybody's all they're talking about on Twitter is just like these meme tokens.
Right.
Like, and it gets boring.
Well, that, and it's not going to last too long.
No.
Right? Because, the market also eventually gets exhausted and is like, what?
I'm done with these meme tokens.
Lame, dude. Lame. No
yeah.
thanks. Right? And then it's like, okay, this new shiny thing is over there. Let's go there.
Yeah.
So we're coming up in the next few weeks. We're going to look for these new shining verticals, right?
Yeah.
And, as of right now, I'm really looking close at stacks, dude.
Yeah,
I'm looking at that direction. But if anybody else has any other ideas where we should be looking, let us know.
Definitely let us know in the comment section below. All the links will be in the comment or in the description as well. But yeah, that's it for us. The pandemic spreads on crypto, and let us know what you think. I appreciate you guys for watching, and we will catch you in the next video.
Peace.